Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you to everyone that has joined us online and in person. Um, and I just want to kind of kick things off just with a little bit of a summary. What we're going to be talking about today, we want to just a brief overview. What are some of the most critical tools first marketers need to be successful? We're going to be covering what expectations are typically set with the first marketers, and or are they achievable? Uh, when ideas don't come to fruition, when to quickly pivot, and lastly, ensuring sales, marketing, and other departments are aligned. So I want to actually turn it over to our panelists, and we're just going to kind of go down the line. It could be popcorn style if you guys would like. If you guys could quickly just provide us with a quick introduction, your background, and maybe share a little bit of your experience as the first marketing hire in your organization.
I can go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Lily Macumber. I am the community lead at Scroobius. Scroobius is an online marketplace that connects diverse entrepreneurs to diverse sources of capital by way of a recommendation engine powered by AI. My experience in the tech ecosystem is often as an early employee. I kind of dubbed myself a serial early employee in that way. And so when it comes to marketing, I've never had that kind of traditional marketing role, but all of the roles I have been in have just encompassed marketing because you wear so many hats at the beginning. So that's me.
Hi, my name is Manisha Misra. I am the founder of Boards by Mo. We are a catering company here in the Boston area. By default, because I started the company, I was the first marketer because I was the first everything. But since then, we have grown to a team of 8. So I do actually have a marketing team now who's kind of taken over. But it's been so much fun trying to learn and understand how to market a new business, especially one in the creative space. We've been in business for 3 years. We started May of 2020. We're still growing and still building, and we're excited to talk about what we've learned along the way.
Hey everybody, my name is Connor Harbison. I'm the founder of Atlas Urban Farms. We design and build vertical farming units for culinary educators and innovators. I actually brought one with me today. This is what we design and build. Most of my team are engineers, so I do all the marketing. Sort of as a founder, you have to wear a lot of hats. And I'm actually interested to learn some things from this panel as well. So this is going to be really fun.
Right, awesome. I definitely can relate to wearing a lot of hats. Want to sort of just kind of piggybacking off of that. My first question is for you, Lily. From your experience, what are the absolute must-have tools and resources for a first marketer to succeed in an early stage startup environment?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've learned, of course, we're a software platform. There's all those tools. There's MailChimp. We use customer.io, which has been super helpful in terms of content and connecting it to our product. But when it actually comes to kind of the marketing work in terms of brand awareness and in terms of even revenue early on, the biggest thing that I've used is my network and working on building that out. My first summer at Scroobius, I spent 3 out of the 5 nights a week going to different networking events and just shouting from the rooftops. People were probably sick of me about what we did and meeting all the people I could, and then also tapping into networks of my own to grow those. So I got my MBA at Babson, so I tapped into that network a lot and got more involved with that. So I think for me, the biggest tool has always been network and getting out there when it comes to kind of non-traditional tools, I would say.
Very interesting. I actually can very much appreciate that answer. So I guess just sort of segueing into a question for Connor. This question is about setting expectations. Um, and what are some of the common expectations that founders often have when hiring their first marketer, and how can these expectations be set realistically to ensure both parties are aligned?
Thank you. I think a lot of people expect, marketing, you have to be super active on social media. I know in some of the early days, I sort of had that expectation, like, I got to be producing content all the time because that's what you do, and more followers equals better, without really having a strategy behind it. I think social media can be good if it's sort of a funnel to sales, but just doing stuff online to do stuff online is not really a good use of your time. And actually, my first marketing hire didn't work out because I found someone who was good at social media and said, run with it without having much of a larger strategy behind it. And it wasn't a good fit, which is fine. But I think knowing your end goal, and not just, oh, everyone's on Instagram or TikTok or X or whatever, or I have a blog, I'm a thought leader. Okay, sweet.
Yeah, I think the intention behind it's important, just to kind of tap onto what he said. So when I joined Scrupia, so our founder, Allison, she is a very big Twitter presence, X presence. And for her, we've gotten a lot of kind of leads and business generation from that, but she's also super intentional about what she posts, and that it aligns with our brand goals, and, intentionality is a part of our brand. So I think it all wraps up into that intention as well. And I think with marketing, it's easy to kind of be like, oh, well, I'm just going to, what Connor said, go out there and just post a bunch of stuff and be a thought leader or call myself that. But when it comes down to it, the thought leaders are actually doing it pretty intentionally.
That's it. So I actually kind of want to piggyback off of this. This is good. So I have so many questions around this. There are a variety of different industries represented on this panel this morning. And intention, I think that's a really big thing for marketers. And so just because X works for this industry doesn't necessarily work for this. Can you guys kind of speak on, your experience with that and really kind of finding like the core areas that you guys want to focus on, type of thing? Yeah. And popcorn, anyone can answer that.
I would love to jump in here. So I have a catering company, and my whole point of my company is food styling. X would not work for me if I was just on there typing things, right? Instagram is where my company blew up. As soon as I started posting pictures of our final product, of all of this food styling, that's how I started getting people to my page. Had I used a more word-based, social media platform, I would not have been able to grow. So the intention behind it is not, pump out as much content as humanly possible on every single platform. That's when you are literally just wasting your time and your efforts on things that aren't going to be yielding results. Find the platform that works for you in whatever capacity that is. So for me, I can take really great pictures of really pretty food. So I'm just going to hone into that and post it where that belongs, which for me has been Instagram. There's so many different ones. I dabbled in TikTok, and then I got annoyed, and then I dabbled again. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to stay in my lane. So I think it's important to just not get burnt out too, because if you hire a marketing person and you're like, we're doing all of this, they're going to be like, none of this is yielding anything. I don't really know what to look for. I'm all over the place. So find what works and stick to it.
And sorry, I contribute a lot. And just to kind of contribute to, at the end of the day too, marketing is about yielding hopefully revenue, and you want to measure it. And we were talking about this earlier. It's hard to measure when you're at the early stage, when you're at a startup. It just is. There's a million things going on. But focusing on one platform or whatever platform's working and being intentional does make that measurement aspect a little easier, because the ins and out of the platform and what your goal with that specific platform is going to yield. So I think, when it comes to kind of the measurement behind it all, focusing on what works is super important.
I love it. I just want to also just say that please share. There's no such thing as over contributing. Please, we want to know everything. I'm here to pick your brains. Please jump in. Even if I direct a question, please just jump in.
You'll regret that later.
Yeah, I love sharing.
I love that. So actually, this kind of brings me to another question, finding out, what kind of works for you, doing that and sort of, just making marketing plans and, executing on those. With that, I'm sure that there are things that you guys have found that have been unsuccessful. It's just the nature of the beast. So if you guys can kind of, maybe share a little bit about that, and how you navigate those ideas that may not be as successful as others.
Yeah, I'll jump in. We had a massive pivot about a year and a half ago. Completely changed our business model, changed our target segment, we went from a service to a product, and the marketing changed. We were actually a lot on Instagram because it was a lot of here's how you can do this thing at home, and oh, come work with us. And sharing pictures of like the manufacturing process, number one, is not very sexy. And number two, it has a lot of implications for patentability. So we stopped doing that. But I think you have to be sort of not harsh with yourself, but clear-eyed, and not just, oh no, because every founder believes in their business, but you have to be able to understand, like, okay, this is not working. Analytics certainly help. They really, really help. And you have to understand, like, okay, now we're just throwing not necessarily good money after bad, but like good time after bad, and just like, okay, pull the plug. We're going to do something else.
And I think too, when it comes to kind of trying things and then have them not work, talking to customers is helpful. So similar to Connor, we're not pivoting per se, but we're kind of focusing more, or as much as we can focus, because small team, we're pretty lean, but focusing more on a different business model. And so that required all new collateral, when it comes to kind of interpersonal or interdepartment communications. That's just me talking to myself and to the founder. But what it all meant was like, okay, making new collateral. And to do that, I think, one of kind of the key things when it comes to marketing too is obviously alignment, but talking to your customers. And I think that's kind of a big thing as well.
You said something really interesting that just stuck out to me, which is alignment. I understand that you guys have different structures in your respective organizations and entities, but when you're working with across different departments, and this is for anybody, with different stakeholders, fill in the blank, how do you guys ensure alignment? How are you able to sort of keep that sort of equilibrium to be able to execute on some of these marketing ideas?
I'll jump in here. So when I started the company, it was just me, and I was like ad hocing different systems, tools. One day I needed email marketing, so I researched email marketing and I found a system that works. 2 weeks later, I really needed a sales enablement tool, so I researched a sales enablement tool and I found what works. What ended up happening at the end of it is I had this Franken system, I think that's what tech people call it, of just different systems and softwares. None of them were talking to each other. Getting reporting and analytics and figuring out data was like one of those like FBI murder maps where they use like red string to connect the dots. That's what it felt like. I was like, if I send this marketing email, how many people are clicking on the CTA to take them to the website? How many people are actually ordering? Where's the rep? It was impossible to figure out. So for me, now that I have teams, I have a sales team, I have me, I have my marketing team, it's really important that we use systems that talk to each other. So one, either it's all under one roof, so we have an all-in-one system, or at least they easily integrate so the data can be pushed and pulled with everyone on the team. So there is not one thing my salesperson does that my marketing person can't see very transparently. But then also we have our normal team meetings where we're talking about what we're pushing and what we're product launches are coming up and all of that. But for me, it all goes down to the data. You need to be able to very easily grab that, decipher it, and figure out what's working and what's not. Otherwise, it's going to become even more frustrating than not doing anything at all.
So one of the things that's worked well for us is a lot of transparency across the team. So I take notes of all my customer interviews. I do all of them. I'm the marketing guy. I have a bunch of engineers working for me, but I've uploaded those notes onto a shared doc. So anyone on the team can look at that whenever they need to. When my mechanical engineers are working on the CAD file, when my electrical engineers are redesigning our circuit board, they can refer to this. And now it's like 40 or 50 pages of shorthand notes. Yeah, it's like several years of interviews.
Wow.
And they can refer to it. I don't think they like go through and read it, but it's searchable, it's referenceable, and it's, if they need to go to the voice of the customer, they can.
And building off of that too, both of what you both said. So the first point about data and being able to easily decipher it. And, again, I said early on, one of my biggest marketing tactics was networking and just getting out there. And for me, that's obviously much harder to measure. And for me, it was a long game. So like that first summer when I was networking, I didn't really see results until probably a year later. And what results looked like was them coming back to me, people I had met, and either introing me to someone else. And so you can kind of find unique ways to measure that kind of non-data based or non-platform based things. And then going off of what Connor said too about documentation and using different tools to kind of help keep your team aligned. So we recently launched our ambassador program, and by we, I mean I've just been like championing it. And so, part of that is, okay, educating our ambassadors and our city leads about what we do and everything. And part of what I did in that activation document, the onboarding document, was link prior sales calls I had. I used Fathom. I could not recommend Fathom more. It's like a Chrome extension or a Zoom extension. You can take notes and flag things while you're talking. It's an amazing tool. But I linked all of those videos, and humans, it's just a psychological fact that we take in video so much quicker and easier than we do text. So using those different tools as well to keep your departments aligned has been helpful for us.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, you guys, different trajectories, but I really appreciate how you guys have all sort of shared the evolution of how you guys have grown. Now, I guess kind of piggybacking off of that, this question is for you, Lily, can you share a little bit about, as a company grows, yours respectively, how you scale?
Yeah. So I think ironically, it also comes back to alignment. So like I said, I'm first employee to a solo founder. So Allison and I work very closely. We, have our own we own different things. But I think alignment between us has been the biggest thing that's contributed to growth. We both kind of know what our priorities are at the moment. And if they change, there's transparency, which you were talking about. And that's something that as an early employee in a bunch of different companies, I've always looked for, because for me, I need to know what's going on just like across the board in order to do the multiple jobs I do well. So when it comes to kind of scaling and growth for us, it's really, really been transparency, I would say. And then of course, documentation. So Allison is very big on documentation. So when I do get free moments, I'm creating standard operating procedures, because when we do hire an official marketer in the future, onboarding them will be 10 times easier, because we have all of these different procedures for doing everything from setting up our virtual workshops to bringing on a new city lead. So it's a mix of kind of transparency between myself and the founder, and then also documentation.
Now, I can definitely appreciate baking in contingencies. Could you speak a little bit about maybe both some of the challenges in scaling and the opportunities as well?
Yeah, I think, and the company's been around for 3 years. I'll be coming up on 2 years in November. So, we're still very lean. Like, we're super, when we say scale, like we're not like this huge, company yet. But I think, the hardest thing is time. Like I said, I wear multiple hats. There's some days when I am working in our product, not developing. I'm not a coder. Don't ask me to do that. But, I'm doing a bunch of different things. And I think time and kind of prioritization of what I need to be focusing on, for me, time management comes early, but that is a challenge. It's just having enough time to do things and then also see results where you can. And then opportunities. That's a good question. I think it's twofold. I think time is, an inhibitor, but then it also does bring so many opportunities in a weird way, because when you figure out what you want to focus on, putting your effort and your energy there, helps you to do better at whatever task you're doing. And then you see the kind of fruit of that labor, I would say.
Yeah, I 1000% agree. I think we're a very small team as well. I think the thing that scale brings is like something I might get to spend 10 minutes on because I have a million other things in the future. That will be someone's entire job. Like optimizing our email funnel. I might okay, this is good enough for now, and it gets us through next week or next month or the next 6 months. Yeah. Eventually that'll be someone's all they think about, which is really nice.
You can dig that.
Yeah, I think for me, the main thing was focus. I think as I continued hiring, those first hires too, the first hire is so important to your business because they have to be okay with just walking into so much uncertainty and no processes, no systems. They can figure it out with you, and it's not always the easiest thing. Um, but there's a real challenge of staying focused on the immediate, most important task at hand as you're going through your day. And this is taking it almost by like the hour sometimes. It's like, what am I going to focus on from 12 to 1? Like, put the emails away for a second and let's build out our sales pipelines. Let's build out our different deal stages. Like, let's figure that out before moving on to the next thing. I have always struggled with that. I will just like, there's like a ping pong going on in my head where I'm like, ooh, sales funnel, ooh, let me do this. And so it was really difficult for me to just sit down and say, okay, what is my focus and my priority? And I will say it held me back for probably a good year until I realized what was happening. And then when I was able to kind of hone that in a little bit, it helped us grow a lot quicker.
I could definitely relate. So anecdotally, marketing has such a now time signature, as you guys know. And right when you learn a really cool program, something else comes out, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so much cooler and better!" And now I have to learn this thing. Now, you guys talked about all three of you guys had spoken a little bit about data earlier, so I kind of want to jump back in that and ask you guys, in an era of data-driven marketing, how can founders and first marketers work together to leverage data effectively, even with limited resources?
Yeah, I think even with limited resources, there are so many out there that are free, that are available, that you just need to utilize. But I think it gets confusing because there's too many things and you don't know what to utilize. So, are you supposed to be using the email marketing tool and the SMS tool and this tool and that tool? It's more so about utilizing kind of whatever, again, your priority, your focus is, and pulling that data. So for me, at the very beginning, when I said, okay, I need to start utilizing email marketing, do I open marketing emails that pop in my inbox? Not really. No, why not? Because the subject line kind of sucks, or they're spamming me, or they're emailing me 4 times a day. All right, let's not do that. How do we make this valuable? How do we figure out like what other people are going to like? And I'd start with myself. Like, what do I like? What captures my attention? So that's my own personal data. Then you go through, all right, I sent this one email. Click rate, terrible. Open rate, terrible. All right, that didn't work. What do we do? Then you just send another one. Let's move the call to action up a little bit. Do people click on it more? Ooh, click rate's getting a little bit higher. What are we doing? Less words, more pictures. This is working. A lot of it is just failing a lot, but you have to be humble enough to know, like, I did that. That was really bad. So let's try it again. Let's see if it works another time. And we'll just tweak this, tweak that. Let's tweak the colors. Let's tweak the font, little things like that. But if you're using, I'll use a very specific example, email marketing. If you're using an email marketing tool, it'll tell you that. If you use MailChimp, Constant Contact, HubSpot, it will tell you what your click rate is. It will tell you what your open rate is, your unsubscribe. Take all that in and learn from it. Don't just use it as numbers that pop up that you share with, the founder or something like that. Listen to it and learn from it and continue pivoting to what actually ends up working.
Yeah, and I think too, putting yourself in and specifically when it comes to kind of email marketing, I guess, putting yourself in the shoes of whoever the recipient of that content or whoever the goal of your marketing is, whatever the goal is, right? The goal audience, putting yourself in the shoes of, okay, how are they receiving this? I had a similar experience. Every Friday we send out a brief, just like a newsletter for the founder members on our platform. And early on, I was just like putting like your weekly community brief. And then I changed it to be more in depth and have like these different parts. And you would like open rates through the roof. And we have amazing open rates and click rates on that. And even before our product is still a work in progress. And even before, major developments happened, at least we had that going really well.
Yeah.
And it was something of value add we could bring.
You know what's worked really well for me? Everyone write this down. It's important. Taylor Swift lyrics in my email marketing. For some reason, anytime I put like random funny things in, jokes, lyrics, like make it my own personality, which that in itself, I think is a whole different part
Voice.
of marketing that people forget.
Yeah.
If you are like Chat GPT, copy paste your marketing content and your captions, people know that. They don't believe you. They don't really think you believe in your product. They know you're just sending to send. If you start adding your personality into it, everybody knows knows if they follow me on Instagram, I show my face all the time. I'm always in my stories, always in my reels. They know who I am. If I sent something out that was super like, here's a picture of cheese, please buy me, nobody would do it because they're like, that's not Mo. That's not who we follow. That's not why we support this company. But when I go in there with like my own personality, I'm a little inappropriate sometimes on Instagram too. They love that. They put that in there too. That's just who I am and what my company's built on. So I think that's a huge part of it is, whatever works. You just got to keep doing it. This stuff is hard. So you got to make it work somehow.
I can say too, from like, again, I do not have like a huge following on any platform. But Allison, my founder, does on Twitter. She's a pretty decent following. And for her, what she said has really worked is just being authentic. And I know that's kind of a buzzword these days, but really just, not being afraid to speak what she thinks. And for us, it's resonated, the things she's saying are resonating with our intended platform users. So it all connects. But she just puts her own voice into it. And one of the things that I think those who follow her probably admire is that she is just herself and she's saying what it is or what she thinks or whatever. So.
No, thank you guys for adding that. I think that's super important to have that human element because I can tell you, like, I know when something's written on ChatGPT. Like, we don't speak in this lofty high English. So, I mean, not normally like a one-on-one conversation. So I think that's super important. There's a lot of, I think it's a wonderful tool, but I think it needs a lot of prompting and you still need to edit it because people can tell folks, just so. So, kind of going off of that and, this is really a question for everybody, but Monisha, since we were just talking about branding, really, and sort of inserting your voice, and Lily, same thing. Wanted to sort of talk about building a strong brand. I think that's super important. Establishing a strong brand presence is pivotal in startups. What steps did you take to build a recognizable brand identity, and what impact did it have on the overall growth of the company?
So I think I was in a little bit of a unique situation where I never intended to start well, no, that's not unique. Everyone feels that way. I never intended for this company to actually become like my full-time. This was a side hustle. This was a weekend gig. I didn't really care to grow it very much at the beginning outside of what was kind of already happening. When I realized the growth was becoming organic, that's when I was like, oh, maybe I should put a little more effort into this. Maybe I should try a little bit harder to like continue going down this path. And I think, just like you said, I feel like it was a lot of just me at the beginning. It was a lot of me talking, me sharing. But what's worked the best for me from the beginning is sharing the ugly. When I come on my stories and I'm like, today was awful, 0 to 10, it was a 0. And I think that was, people started resonating really well with that, of just saying like, you know what? This isn't rainbows and butterflies. No matter what industry, what business, whatever you're doing, this isn't easy. And then I started kind of building my brand on that. Like, I'll always be honest with you. I made a huge mistake a couple of weeks ago and I just shared it on my stories. Like, that was a really rough day for me, but I learned, this is what I learned. This is what I took away from it. I promise you it won't happen again. That's kind of how I started building the brand. And then of course there's the collateral, there's the actual branding, there's people knowing, my product when they see it. I just feel like that came second for the type of business that I'm in.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think people mistake brand for like your logo and your colors and your all of that stuff. But it's really not just your customers, but everyone's interaction with you and your company. And early on, you're going to be the brand. The founder is going to be the brand. That's just the nature of it. Something we did really early on at Babson College, where I did my MBA, we set up hydroponic installations all over campus, and we branded them. We used like canvas tote bags and printed the name on them. So these sort of double, but it's also like what you would take to a farmer's market. So it's a little bit. And it got to the point where I could be like, yeah, I'm the hydroponics guy, and anybody on campus would be like, oh, you're the guy. And that's really nice for my ego. But the real benefit is people have come up to me and said, hey, can I work with you?
Yeah.
And that's how I got my software dev. That's how I got my electrical engineer. That's how I got my mechanical engineers. And that's really beneficial for the company.
Yeah.
All from marketing. kind of.
Connor's the only one who understood this assignment by bringing actual
Literally.
marketing collateral with him. The rest of us are just here.
Consistency.
Everything,
Yeah.
everything.
I do have a
one-
branded cup. But
Yeah, there you go. One thing I'll just add to that. When I started growing, it was really important for us not to lose that same voice that I started the company with. So how do you do that when you get someone for sales? How do you do that when you are now, depending on someone else to do your marketing? So I'm going to take it back to systems and softwares because that's just what I live by. But I used a sales enablement tool to create templates for my sales reps. And so no matter who was responding, me, Hannah, Lisa, Marcy, Adeline, whoever was responding to that email, it was based off a sales template that they could go and edit, but the language was all uniform. So the presence that we were exuding, no matter who was responding, was all the same. And so if there's one thing, you can go look at all our reviews, you can talk to anybody who's used our services, they will always say the customer service was amazing. And it does not matter who's doing it. Honestly, it's not really me anymore. It's my whole team. And they are so great because they respond in a timely fashion, but they have templates that kind of help guide them. Of course, they're edited. Don't worry, they edit them themselves. But it's one of those things where, as you grow and scale, however you started it, whatever your brand was when you created, you can't lose that just because you're scaling. So you have to find ways to keep little pieces of that.
And I think too, at the end of the day, your brand is your values. So what you as a company value, what the founder values, what the early team values, and that all kind of ties into what the founder and the early team are passionate about. So for us, we're really passionate about diversity and equity in the startup ecosystem. And so that just seeps from every pore of our brand. And for us, it's worked really well because we've attracted, the founders we want to attract, and, diverse founders know if there's a place I want to go, or in diverse can mean a whole bunch of different things, right? But they know, okay, I need to go to Scroobius. So helpful is our brand, diversity is our brand, inclusion, all of that. And it's consistent across everything we do.
That's fabulous. So I'm sorry, in the beginning, I forgot to add that we're going to actually bake in some time at the end for questions, about 10 minutes. There will be a mic that goes around. I'm going to ask everyone to please speak into the mic so that people that are online could also hear the questions. And we're going to leave about 10 minutes, but just by show of hands, I just want to see if I need more time. Are there folks that have questions at the end? Okay. All right, great. So we will definitely leave time for questions at the end. Just forgot to mention that earlier. Okay, so just pivoting a little bit, I want to ask a question about adapting to change. Um, and this, I'm going to start actually direct this to Connor, but this question, please, if you guys jump in as well and answer. Startups are known for their agility and need to adapt quickly, as you guys know. Can you share an example of a time when you had to change marketing strategies on the fly? And how did you ensure the team stayed on track despite the shift?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I alluded to it earlier, but we had a really massive pivot. So we had been selling sort of hydroponics as an amenity, as a service. So setting up a garden and doing events around it, like bringing in mixologists and using fresh herbs to make cocktails, something like that. And marketing to schools and co-working spaces. And we were starting to get like actual letters of intent and actual like contracts in place. And there was one day in March of 2022 where everyone said, "Hey, this is really cool, but we cannot pay you. We cannot, this isn't in our budget." And that was really defeating. Oh, it was
Fun.
terrible. Yeah. And then the next day I learned I made the finals for a pitch competition and I had to pitch in a week. And I knew like, okay, I can't get up there and be like, yeah, this is our plan, but everyone just dropped out. So I started just calling people in a bunch of other segments that we had sort of thought about, but not gone into. And about 3 days later, I was on the phone with a chef and he said, "Yeah, we throw away half of our produce because it just goes bad." I said, "I can solve that problem. I have the technology. We need to pivot it a little bit." And that led to an entire pivot. Like I said earlier, we went into making a product, which I have right here.
It's everything.
And we won the pitch competition, by the way, which is fun to the business.
Congrats.
And the way we changed our marketing. So up to that point, I'd been, talking to other like tech people, innovation people, let's hop on a Zoom call, let's email. Chefs don't do that. Um, so I started trying to talk to them, sending emails and just hearing nothing. Eventually, I started texting them, and that worked a little bit better. The thing that really worked was taking an example of my work, and that's why I bring this around with me, and literally going into restaurants and being like, "Hey, can I have 3 minutes of your time?" And most of the time they'd say, no, get out. And some of them would say, yeah, okay, I'll hear you out. We have since moved on from restaurants because we've found other segments that are a little bit better. But that's probably been the largest shift, and you sort of have to do it very quickly and be very open-minded, and be ready to change. You have to sort of have the most faith in your startup until the second that you have to have the most faith in the new direction. I hope that
Certainly.
answers the question.
Yeah, I think twice now in the last 3 years, we've had to pivot from B2C to B2B to B2C to B2B again, just because of the economy, just because of what was going on with layoffs, just because of what was going on with people not having as much disposable income anymore. There's just so many things. I don't have a need to have product. You don't need charcuterie. I mean, some of you do, but you don't really need charcuterie boards and cheese boards. But it is really nice at a company event, at a team meeting, at a wedding, at a baby shower. So I have a nice to have product that I had to make happen during economic roller coasters. So we kept having to switch and figure out who our market was at the time. And that was so difficult because, Lily, back to your point of you need to know who you're talking to. The audience changes, but then you have to change with it. You can't send the same language to a B2B customer that was going out to your B2C customer. It just doesn't work. And so you have to start shifting. You also have to start marketing differently. Instagram, wonderful. Guess who's not on Instagram all the time? B2B. And so there was a lot of things that I'd be like, okay, great. Now I have to go utilize LinkedIn. I have to go try other things. And you just have to I just think you have to try a lot and fail a lot. So you just have to figure out what works, but then you kind of have to try a lot and fail a lot again in a couple of months. And then that's like a cycle. And then hopefully one day the cycle ends. I need someone to tell me one day the cycle ends. But I think you just, at the meantime, you're just kind of working out, who to talk to, how to talk to them. And then when you are pivoting, you just have to be really open to it because those brain blocks really are tough to get past when something's been working for so long.
And I think too, to kind of add on to that, being open to pivoting is super important, but it also needs to come with a really, really well thought reason as to why you're doing it. So just because things aren't working a certain way doesn't mean oh, now I'm going to go pivot, because you will drive yourself insane. For Mo, things I'm sure you were thoughtful about it and how this isn't working for right now. Let me give it however much time. Let me give myself a deadline, and then we'll look at everything and then pivot.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one point. I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is just, at least for us and for, I think, a lot of probably software and hardware really startups, is having a really strong go-to-market if you're early. For us, one of our go-to-market methods, one of the things we do is we do free pitch workshops, which is all of the content from our platform into an hour and a half of a really, really, really well done pitch workshop. And for us, we've used that tool across the board when it comes to switching who we're selling to or who our goal is, and we've been able to kind of fit that in and plug that into our different other methods, no matter what segment we're working on. So having a really strong, clear and tactical go-to-market is super important. And for us, it's been at some points one of the few sources of stability. Okay, if we're trying to figure something out, can we offer them a pitch workshop, or do they know someone where we can help them out by offering a pitch workshop? How can we get ourselves in there? For us, it's free. It's an hour and a half of our time. But it's really helped us stay focused on, again, end goal, bringing in more people, results, even as segments change.
Thank you all for sharing that. So talking about results, I want to do a little bit of a shift and talk about measuring success. So as you guys know, metrics are essential for tracking marketing successes. What key performance indicators, KPIs, did you guys focus on as the first marketer, and how did you communicate the impact of your efforts to the rest of the team?
Hello. Yeah, I think I just feel like ours again felt a little bit up in the air because I wasn't certain what we were creating. Like I think it was sitting down and really talking through strategy. When I realized that my marketer was so good at what she did and she was passionate is when she was coming to me with ideas of her own and she was like, "Hey, I know you said this." And then she was challenging me. That was even more important. She was like, "I know you said that this would work, but I actually don't think it's going to. I think we should do this instead." And I was like, "Wait, that is such a good idea. Like way better than what we talked about the other day." So I think a lot of mine was just coming from we're just sitting in this room. It's like 11 o'clock at night. We're trying to figure out what's happening and what's not. And I think outside of data, metrics, analytics, all of that, it was like the dedication to wanting to be there and helping and challenging me. I just felt like that was really important. And then there was, we did our typical 30, 60 day like training. We did our quarterly reviews to make sure that we were both aligned with what we were doing from a company perspective, what she needed, what I needed, were we hitting the numbers? The numbers ended up just kind of being the like added bonus to everything else because we were creating something and we were building something and it was a ton of fun. So I don't really think I answered your question, but that's how we felt.
And I can add on to it. It is interesting when you talk about KPIs at the early stage, because if someone were to say to me, "Oh, pull up, your company's KPI board," I would say like, we have Asana, but we don't have like one dedicated place. We're early and there's not that many of us, right? But when I think about how we measure things and, very big on measurement, a lot of it goes into one, revenue, even, how are you making money, even if your product doesn't exist yet? Like, what are those kind of early scrappy things you're doing? But then two, metrics in terms of your customers. So I also like super customer focused. How are our users feeling about certain things? What successes are they having after using our product? And we can't, you can't relay every data point back as causal, but it is helpful and it is something we track, at least for our own purposes, is like what's happening to our customers after they use this, or how are we informing them of different data points. And then at the end of every year, I do a community report on all of the founders who have come through that side of the platform. And so sharing then that with the world has also been kind of interesting and helpful as well.
I think early on, I took a very binary approach. Like I'm marketing, and if they want our product, then it's a success, and if they don't, then it's a failure, which is both not a good way to approach it and also a misunderstanding of what marketing is. I think that's sales. I think marketing is more you're having a conversation with your customer and you're informing them about your product or service or company or values or whatever it may be, but they're also informing you. And now I sort of approach it, even if they're not someone I want to sell to, uh, we're learning about the market. We're learning, oh, there might be an opportunity for this other segment we haven't thought about, and let's put that in the roadmap down the line, or that we can pull this information and talk about this to our current clients, or it's less data driven, but I think it gives us a more fleshed out picture, maybe.
Well, and communication too is a big part of that. And Allison always says, and it's so true, it's now become like a mantra, is value not communicated is value lost. So when something happens with whatever customer or whatever part of our product, we are so communicative about how that affects a person's account, how that affects, their experience. Because if you're not communicating that with them, you're not keeping that kind of open dialogue to then say, okay, whatever future marketing we want to do, we feel comfortable doing that with our customers.
Thank you guys for that. Something just came to mind as you guys were speaking. You have your KPIs, you have your data that you can use to inform your marketing strategies. Have you guys leveraged any surveying to get that sort of feedback, kind of going back to the human element of communication?
We have. So to date, we have over 600 founders who have come through that side of the platform. And, as much as we can, we survey, we get their opinions on things and their experience with things. And it usually is helpful too when we're doing something like my community report, because then that's like a end goal where I can parse out, okay, these are all the questions I want to ask our users, but what do I really need to ask? So yeah, data and surveys are super helpful.
Go ahead.
So one of the things I do is I have a picture of our product on my phone, and I pull it out at networking things and say, this is what we build. But I also have a QR code that goes to our waiting list. So when people say, oh, that's super cool, how can I get one? I say, go right here. And on that Google form, there's email, name, et cetera. But there's also, what do you want to grow? What use case is this for? What is your job or like area of the industry? And we gather all that data from our most engaged customers. And now we have a product pipeline for, the plants that we're going to grow. We sort of know how these people want to use our product. And it's been just so informative. And I'm a huge fan of, throwing together a Google form and sending it out and just being very quick about it.
Yeah, we always, having a product-based business, I'm always kind of posting in different areas of what would you like to see more of, or if this was a little different, would this work better? Or, we just launched this new product, I think maybe 2 months ago, and every single person who's ordered it from us, we have sent a follow-up email saying, hey, just be as honest as possible. What could have been better? What did you like? What did you not like? And we've gotten some of the best feedback that way, and we've been able to make those tweaks really quickly. For the last 3 years, one thing that's worked really well for us, well, two things. One, every single person who engages with our product or books us for an event, we send an email the next day thanking them, and then also asking for a Google review, which is its own marketing in its own, like just having that space where people can go get, testimonials from other customers. And then the second thing is, on forms on our website, there is always a drop down that says, how did you hear about us? And then if there is a referral, they're asked to put the referral name. And I just think it's really interesting. There was one avenue that I was not planning on doing from a marketing perspective because I did feel like it was a waste of time. I ended up doing it at the last minute, and that's still to this day our number one referral source onto our website. So I would never have known that had I not put that question in there. And so it's interesting now. It was more of a networking thing that I didn't see the value of it going into it. And now I'm so open to those things because I've seen through the numbers, through the customers, through the revenue, most importantly, that it worked. So I'll continue to kind of go down those paths.
Yeah, and just sorry, go ahead.
What was the number one thing?
Yeah.
So I was asked to be on a podcast a couple of years ago, and the host was like very new. He was not prepped for our intro call. It was just kind of very messy. And I was like, you know what? I have so much going on. Like, do I want to take an hour? An hour is a long time. And I was like, do I want to take an hour to talk to this person who now it's actually 2 hours because he wasn't really prepped the first call? And then I ended up doing it. And on my Shopify site, it still shows one of the number one reasons that people get to my website.
Yeah, word of mouth is powerful. One of the things that across the board we ask, and no matter who it's going to, what its purpose, what the goal is, the net promoter score. So how likely are you to recommend this to another person? That tells you so much about what your users think, how likely they are to send someone your way. It's just a super helpful metric. And then the other thing, I had something else I always forget. There was something else Mo said that I wanted to add to. Oh, both of you talked about kind of constantly communicating with your customers. And when we launched the investor side of our product about 3 months ago, the first 2 weeks we were hand onboarding angel investors, recording the calls and walking them through how to use it, and not even like prompting them, but just listening and watching to what they do, what they interact with. And we now have all those call recordings, and they were sharing their screen and whatnot. But it's so powerful asking them like, oh, well, why did you do this? Or what's your natural instinct here? And just kind of observing behavior. And so, communicating with your early customers frequently and kind of in depth and personal has really been helpful for us too.
That's fantastic. I forgot the exact equation, but it's something like for every person that responds, you have to multiply it by like 25 for people that didn't. We are running right into questions, but before we jump into questions, I have one last question to ask you guys. If you could just quickly, provide some advice for aspiring marketers, for individuals aspiring to be the first marketer in a startup. what advice would you give them to set themselves up for success and effectively contribute to the company's growth?
Get out there. Just like be network. And I know I harp on it, but it was so, when you are a startup and you have like zero funds to do things, you have yourself. And networking is all about shamelessly yet appropriately getting in front of who you need to get in front of and talk to, and talking to everyone, and being helpful to them, and just honestly making friends in the space, because that is how you get introductions to people. That is how you get invited to be in certain rooms. So the biggest thing I would say to any marketer or early hire is do not be afraid to just get out there and, wear your heels and shoes and whatever it might be into the ground, just pounding the pavement.
To build on that, I would say don't worry about scale. If you're the
Yeah.
first one and you're maybe the second or third employee on the team as a whole, don't worry about what you're going to do when you have $10 million of revenue. Don't worry about that, because the stuff you're going to do then doesn't work now, and the stuff you're doing now won't work then. So do what's like super scrappy, like make a t-shirt that cost me $15.
QR codes.
Yeah, that's for free.
Free.
And get out there.
I think for me, it would just be open to trying anything. I hear from a lot of people like, I'm not on that app because I hate it. I don't do this because I don't know how to do it. I don't love this part. And I'm like, well, what if that's like a huge thing for your business? So I think definitely keep your mind open to what could potentially work. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But if it does, it could really surprise you. And the whole like, I don't want to do this because I don't know how.
Teach yourself, figure it out.
YouTube is free.
Yeah.
And if you really, really, really are like, this is not for me, there's another person who will gladly take that on. So utilize your resources, but be open to all of the different avenues that we have from a marketing perspective. There's so many, and all these apps are free. There's so many things that you can do to push your business.
I think that attitude, like, I don't want to do this because I don't know how, maybe the startup world isn't for you.
Yeah.
If someone says that, like,
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
not to be mean, but
It's the truth.
Well, Lily, Connor, and Mo, thank you guys so much. I'm going to open up the floor now for any questions that folks have. I see a couple. All right. If you can also introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi, Tom Dodge. I run a video production company down the street. And for the past decade, we've been hired in my favorite capacity as like campaign marketers. So like for a campaign, people hire us to bring it to life so that we can save them thousands of decisions. So as like a first-time marketer, I really recommend that strategy. So my question is, do you guys have any favorite video campaigns out there recently that have struck with you from their creative strategies that have really worked from an engaging perspective? Because I think seeing inspiration is a great way to help bring it to life afterwards.
Yeah, Airbnb does. I don't know if this is like a campaign per se, but Airbnb does amazing commercials. Millennials love nostalgia. And when I watch an Airbnb commercial, it's just, they bring me so much joy. So yeah, that's what my answer would be.
I'm going to have to think about that one. I'm not entirely sure. There's a tiny part of me that feels like my whole day is inundated with video from social media perspectives, that it's kind of hard for me to pick one out, which is probably because I haven't seen that many good ones. So I'm very excited to see yours.
Similar answer. Nothing stands out.
Hi, my name is Justin. Mo, you were making a comment earlier, and you were talking about how you actually made a shift from more you in terms of the team and being a solo founder to having a team. In terms of your marketing perspective, when was the tipping point in your business specifically? Was it the hiring, or was it actually past the hiring point?
It was because it wasn't fun for me anymore to do it all by myself. The marketing stopped being fun. The sales outreach stopped being fun. The posting fun things on Instagram stopped being fun because I was too stressed to enjoy it anymore. And so the business was growing. It was doing really well. I was getting more orders than before. I was getting all these events, but it stopped being fun. And I think that's when I realized, if I want to keep this going, if I want to keep growing, if I want this to be fun again, I need to delegate. I need to hire somebody. I need to teach them. I need to train them. I need to trust them so I can get some time for me back. And my first hire has been with me for 3 years. She is the most incredible person. I have told her a million times, every single quarterly review we do, this business would not be open had you not joined me, because it just stopped being fun for me. I was good at certain things, I was bad at certain things, didn't matter how to do it all. And it just bogs you down after a while. So business, yes, was growing, but that was more of a personal decision. Every hire since then has been when one aspect of my business stops being fun. And then I'm like, you come here. I hope it's fun for you, because it's not for me.
Hi, good morning. This is Mohammed from Somalia. I'm here through an exchange program with the Department of State. So first of all, thank you for the amazing session. I do work with an innovation hub. So this is an area where we help with startups a lot. Kind of 3 questions. I'm not sure if they are a lot. So the first one is, you talked about marketing being more of a trial and error. You figure out what works and what doesn't work. But then there is money part that is involved in that trial error. When do you stop? When do you think? When marketers love their ideas, they always think this is a good idea. So when do you think it's time to stop and move to another idea? That's the first one. The second question is, I see you guys happen to be the lead of your companies, so it's easier for you to adopt ideas and encourage more marketing efforts. But then what happens if you have a bigger guy above you? How do you get buy-in especially when that person doesn't have the appetite for marketing? And lastly, I want to repeat a question that was asked, but still in a different way. How do you quantify? I know you have KPIs, but then for each dollar that you put into the business, into the marketing advertisement initiatives, how do you quantify? How do you measure them? Thank you very much.
I'll answer your second question of how do you convince the person higher up of your marketing efforts? Did I understand that correctly? I think the higher ups don't care about anything but the numbers, in my opinion. I think if you can show tangible results from a revenue perspective, attributable revenue. So I did this and it attributed to X amount of revenue. That's what your higher ups care about, in my opinion. But I think you need to be able to go in with that data. Ideas, you can say, these are the ideas that we're working on. This is how much budget I'm spending. This is how much I'm expected to bring back to you. But at the end of the day, in order, I think, to push a result and to say, hey, this worked, I think that's driven by the numbers. And if you are putting in months and months and months into something and you're coming back with 0, you're not really going to convince anyone around you that those months of effort were worth anything. So I think that's kind of when, maybe this is back to your first question, of when you would pivot to trying something different. So those goals, those deadlines of, I'm going to try this for X amount of time. And if I result with nothing, or whatever your goals are, if that's not working, it's time to move on to the next idea.
Yeah, I would say, just to jump on that too, and especially to get into your quantification questions of, like, if I spend this dollar, how exactly am I quantifying if it, made an impact? So I come from a startup perspective, obviously, where, like, we don't have a huge, if any, marketing budget, right? So for us, a good way to measure is time. And I'm the first hire. I'm, all of that at the company, but Allison, the founder, is my boss. So I do have to talk to her about it, a lot of things. And I think one thing that she always kind of questions me on is, like, okay, how is it, one, revenue? That's what higher ups do care about. How is that going to bring us revenue? But then 2, how are you justifying your time here? Like, how much time are you spending on this? And how or when do you anticipate seeing the results on it? So I think the factor of time, and because time is so precious early on, using that in terms of measurement has been something that's, I think we definitely talk about a lot.
Yeah, to answer your question about when to pivot or change directions, I think you have to think about, in terms of time, what am I doing today? Where's that going to get me tomorrow? And if we're continuing on this path, like, how is that? You sort of have to extrapolate it out. If I keep doing this, even if my effort today gets me to here, is that same amount of effort, or even if I put in more effort, and and get a better or worse return. Is that going to get me to where I want to get to in a reasonable amount of time? It's really tricky. That was a very abstract answer, I feel like. But it's you sort of have to just, I don't know, use data and trust your gut and then just do it.
Well, and that's the hard part. There, in my opinion, at least for early companies, no matter what it is, there is no hard and fast answer.
Yeah.
A lot of times it is a lot of figuring it out and, hoping something works. And you measure the best you can because obviously that data helps. But yeah, you fail often and you fail fast. And when you keep failing and you kind of change directions.
Thank you so much for the questions.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining.